We've already gone through how to solve absolute value equations that are in the linear form. Okay, the steps to follow are no different than those. Okay, so your first step would be to isolate your absolute value expression. Okay, so in this particular case, it's already isolated. Okay, once you get it completely isolated, what you're going to look to do is you split it all into two equivalent equations. And the way that I would recommend you split this is the left side of each equation should be exactly what's written in the absolute value expression. You don't change anything about it. Don't change the signs, don't change the order. Okay, but that's the left side of each equation. And then the right side of the equation is what changes. So when I split this, the equation on the right, I'm always just going to write exactly what I started with. So negative 4x plus 6 will be my equation on the right. And then in the equation on the left, when I split them, I'm going to write the opposite of what the original expression was. So again, to take the opposite of it, easiest thing to do is just change the sign of each individual term. So this becomes a plus 4x and a minus 6. And once you split this, you're then just going to solve each of the individual equations. Okay, now notice again, the difference is in this step, even though the directions for the steps are exactly the same as what they were on the linear form, in this step, when you solve the equation, it is whatever type that it winds up being that you're dealing with. So in this case, it's a quadratic equation. So in this quadratic equation, you have multiple terms with x's in them, so we're going to move everything to one side, set it equal to 0. So if we subtract a 4x from both sides and add a 6 to both sides, set that equal to 0 and solve the resulting equation. Again, you can look for binomial factors, the factors of positive 6 whose sum is negative 7, negative 6 and negative 1. And so your possible values for x are 6 and 1. Okay, do the same thing in the other equation. Here we would add a 4x to both sides. So again, we have multiple terms with a variable in it, so we're going to move everything to one side of the equation and set it equal to 0. So if we add a 4x to both sides, subtract a 6 from both sides, and once again, look to find any binomial factors here. What two factors of negative 6 have a sum of plus 1? Positive 3, negative 2. So our possible x's also include negative 3 and positive 2. And just like with all the other equations or the methods that we've been looking at in this section, you have to check your solutions. Okay, so if we plug these back in, let's check 6. So the absolute value of 6 squared minus 3 times 6, which is 18. Is that equal to negative 4 times 6 plus 6? So can the absolute value of something equal a negative? No. So 6 is extraneous. Let's move to 1. Absolute value of 1 squared, which is 1, minus 3. We want to see is that equivalent to negative 4 times 1 plus 6. So is the absolute value of negative 2 equal to negative 4 plus 6? Yeah, so that is going to work. Okay, let's look at the next one to test, which is negative 3. So we take absolute value of negative 3 squared, which is 9, minus 3 times a minus 3 gives us plus 9. And we want to see is that equivalent to negative 4 times negative 3, which is 12 plus 6. Yes, so negative 3 works. And then finally test for 2. 2 squared is 4 minus 3 times 2, which is 6. Is that equivalent to negative 8 plus 6? Again, absolute value cannot equal a negative number. So 2 is going to be extraneous as well. So the only answers that work in this particular case are negative 3 and 1.